Well, this is our first lecture of the year, and it's on Chapter 51 in Animal Behavior. So we're going to be looking at what is animal behavior and what are the different types of animal behavior that we can observe. And basically, one commonality is that all animal behavior is going to be based on some sort of physiological system and process. And the definition of an individual behavior is an action that's carried out by muscles under the control of the nervous system in response to some sort of stimulus. And the goal of behaviors in animals is primarily going to be in acquiring nutrients for digestion, nutrition, and for finding a partner for sexual reproduction. So it's everything an animal does and how it does it. And we basically can break down behaviors into two main types, either innate or learned. And innate is what we would consider the inherited or instinct, the thing that comes automatically, something that is consistent, or we would say it's fixed. And it doesn't vary very much between different individuals of a species. So it's something that's going to be common to almost all of the individuals in a population. As opposed to this, we have learned behaviors, which are made up of something that is learned, um, that is variable, that is flexible. It can change with experience or change in response to the environment. And it's something that can develop over an animal's lifetime. But the ability to learn is something that is innate, it's something inherited. Behavior contributes to homeostasis, and we'll really focus a lot more on homeostasis when we look at body systems and animal physiology, because it's really the foundation of all animal physiology is trying to maintain a set point or a homeostatic point. And basically, again, that's going to come down to getting food or reproducing. We're also going to focus on, in your book, we'll look at different scientists that have contributed to behavioral ecology. Also known, more of an old-fashioned term, but you will still see it, is the term ethology, which is essentially behavioral ecology, the study of the ecological and evolutionary basis of animal behavior. The three major pioneers in this area are Tinbergen, von Frisch, and Lorenz. And so you'll learn a little bit about them, and you should know just a little bit about what each of them contributed. The first one is Tinbergen, and he came up with a really foundational part of ethology or ecological biology, behavioral biology. So his four questions are these here, and you should be familiar with these. What stimulus elicits the behavior? How does the animal's experience during growth and development influence the response? How does the behavior and help the animal survive or reproduce? And what is its evolutionary history? So we break these four questions into two categories, either proximate or ultimate questions. And in that way, when we look at a behavior, we're going to be looking at it through the lens of these questions. We're going to be looking at both the what and the how, which is the proximate causation of that behavior. And then we're also going to look at the ultimate causation of the behavior, which is the why. So the why is going to be, again, the evolutionary significance. How is that behavior contributing to survival and reproduction? What is its natural selection or adaptive value? The proximate is much more the nuts and bolts of the behavior. What is the behavior, like my dog barking there, or how is that behavior occurring, like his vocalization, he can bark. And then the ultimate again is why is this behavior present in that breed? So, for example, we can look at a few different examples, and actually we can look at any animal behavior and break it into these two things. But taking the examples we have here, a male songbird will sing during the breeding season as a response to a high level of testosterone, which binds to hormone receptors in the brain and triggers the production of song. So would you say this is proximate or an ultimate causation of that behavior? It is actually a proximate cause, because what we're looking at when we talk about what it is, it's that they're singing. How is it occurring? Well, or when it occurs during the breeding season. How is the response to a high level of testosterone binding to the hormone receptors in the brain? So that is a proximate causation or explanation of that behavior. The ultimate cause of this behavior is that the male songbird is singing to defend his territory from other males, and he's trying to attract a female so he can reproduce and pass on his genetics. So that's the evolutionary explanation for this vocalization. Another example is with red-crowned cranes. Like many animals, they breed in the spring and early summer. So approximate causation about this, or what is describing this in an approximate way, is that they're breeding in the spring and early summer, and the timing of the breeding then is limited to those two seasons. So we could ask the approximate question: how does day length influence the breeding by the red-crowned cranes? And a reasonable hypothesis to that question is that the breeding is triggered by the effect of increased day length on the animal's production of and response to specific hormones. And they actually have done experiments that support that hypothesis. An ultimate question that we could ask is, what is the evolutionary significance of this behavior? Why did natural selection favor the breeding season to occur only in the spring and summer? A hypothesis for this would be the behavior increases fitness in some particular way. For example, um, parent birds can find more food during that time for a rapidly growing offspring, which would give them an advantage in having reproductive success. So now we're going to look at some of the definitions again of innate behaviors. So one of the types of innate behaviors is called a fixed action pattern, or FAP. And what an FAP is a series of unlearned or innate behavioral acts that are linked to a specific stimulus. They are essentially unchangeable, and once they're started, they usually will keep going until they're completed. And a very common example of this, used again and again, is of the male stickleback fish. They've done many studies, and you can see here some of the things that they've used in their studies. But basically, the behavior of the stickleback is that anytime a male stickleback fish sees something with a red underbelly, it will attack it. And so males have this red coloring on the underneath portion of their anatomy here, and the females do not. So what a stickleback fish will see is either this or this. If they see the red, they attack it. And so what they've done is they have tried all these different shapes of things to see if the male stickleback fish will attack these. And then they'll also bring in something that's similar in shape but does not have the red coloring, and they find that the male stickleback will not attack. So what we say is that the coloring of red on the underneath side makes up what we call a sign stimulus. This is the releaser that triggers that fixed action pattern. And in this case, that fixed action pattern, that behavior, is the attacking that red spotted, whatever it is. Evolutionarily speaking, it's another male. And so the proximate cause is that the red belly of the intruding male acts as a sign stimulus that releases aggression in this male stickleback. And the ultimate causation is by chasing away other male sticklebacks, the male doing the attacking is going to decrease the chance that the eggs that are laid in this nesting territory will be fertilized by another male. Tinbergen is the scientist who studied this. In particular, he spent a lot of time studying these three-spined stickleback fish. There are other examples of fixed action patterns. For example, there's this digger wasp that drops a paralyzed insect near the opening of its nest. But before it will take this dead or paralyzed insect in, it will go into the nest inspecting it and clean it out. And then it'll come back out and then bring the insect in, its food in. But if an experimenter moves the insect away from where it was dropped, a few inches away, when the wasp comes out, it will look for it and find that it's missing. And then when it finds it, it will have to restart that fixed action pattern. So it'll bring it back to the spot next to the nest opening, and then it will go back into the nest and inspect it, and then come back out and then bring the dead insect in. So it has to keep a specific pattern before it can bring its food into the nest. Another example is egg rolling in geese, and I'll show you a picture of what that looks like. So this is the egg rolling behavior in geese. So you'll see that this is the nest that the goose is sitting on. You can see some eggs there. And if it sees an egg outside of the nest, it will roll it back. But what you should note is if they take the egg away mid-roll, what happens? This is an example of how an FAP will continue until the end of the behavior. So whatever the end of that pattern is. So even without the egg there, the goose will still go through the motions of rolling nothing, actually, into the nest. So it'll continue that behavior even without the egg there. Another thing that we can focus on is whether humans have fixed action patterns, and it's a matter of debate, but there is something called the eyebrow flash that is used as evidence to show that humans do have FAPs. So some FAPs in humans, one of them is raising eyebrows, what we call an eyebrow flash. And we do that when we greet somebody for the first time. And it's also something that you can see cross-culturally in the interaction between adults and babies. Whenever an adult sees a baby, they have an eyebrow flash. They raise their eyebrows and make their eyes wider. Another example of an FAP in humans is smiling. So they've actually done studies that show that smiles occur in fetuses. And also there is much evidence to show that babies and children who are born blind still smile. They learn how to smile. And we wouldn't say they actually learn how to smile because it seems to be an innate behavior that is a fixed action pattern in response to feeling happy. There is a lot of learning that goes on with these innate behaviors, though, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we address